So let's. So the ethical implications of that agnosticism was tempered in humans, but not in animals. Felt pain was denied or ignored for much of the 20th century, and I can easily document this. Not only in animals, but in infants. Are you guys familiar with what I'm talking about? Until about 1990, open heart surgery was done without anesthesia on babies, based on the dubious premise that anesthesia is dangerous to babies. It's also dangerous to sick people, you know? What they used was pancuronium bromide or some other curariform drug. And listen, I lectured to these people, okay? To the International Association for the Study of Pain. And in their defense, they said, well, even if it hurts the babies, they don't remember it. Weren't you circumcised? It's none of your business, sir. Well, do you remember it? No. Well, then does it matter? Of course it matters. It matters at that moment. And there's a huge literature now out of pediatrics to show that uncontrolled pain inflicted on babies, number one, as you all know, being in the biomedical area, increases susceptibility to infection, slows and retards healing, and in some cases, if prolonged, can reprogram the nervous system to be more susceptible to chronic pain as you grow up. Okay? I've done 1,600 lectures in 32 countries, and I've lectured to 20,000 cowboys. Okay? You think that's bad? Talk to these pain specialists. I have gotten cowboys pissed off at me, but what happened with the pain people, I've never experienced before or since. They just sat there in a white rage. And as soon as I finished, stalked out, not a single question. Obvious disagreement. No argument. And I mean, that's classic. That's like stepping on anybody's ideology, you know? You say to the bishop, the Trinity is absurd. Going to be pissed off bishop, you know? You say to a doctor who's been cutting on newborn infants that the baby does feel pain, and you're stepping on his moral sense, you see? So that people have a lot of stake in that. When I wrote the federal laws, I went to Congress to defend them. And in '82, Congress said to me, Henry Waxman, said, look, basically, what you say makes sense, but we're political beings, and the research community gives us a hell of a lot of money, you don't give us anything. So if we're going to do something that the research community doesn't want, we've got to have very solid reasons. So what's your reason for this law? I said, my basic reason is that they don't control pain in animals. And he said, they say they do. You prove they don't. Well, I mean, I had technicians calling me on a monthly basis. They did this and they're not controlling pain, blah, 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 blah. And that wasn't going to wash, because if a technician said that, they'd send out a dean to say, that's absurd, she doesn't understand, blah, blah, blah. So I finally figured out what to do. I went to the Library of Congress, where I had a friend, and we did a literature search on analgesia for laboratory animals, 1982. How many papers did I find, sir? 8. 0. We expanded it to animals in general, and we found 2, one of which said there ought to be papers. And another one said we don't know anything. You look in the textbooks of veterinary medicine, and there is not a single reference to the fact that pain hurts. I'll tell you one amusing personal anecdote. In '82, I gave the lecture in UFAW in London. You familiar with UFAW? It's a Universities Federation for Animal Welfare. It's an intellectually respectable animal welfare group. And they said, do us a favor, we need a respondent to a Dr. Igo. Some of you may know that name, big pain researcher. So Igo gets up and for 45 minutes talks about how the electrochemical activity in the cerebral cortex of the dog differed from that of people. And since that's the information processing area, the dog didn't really feel pain in any sense we can understand. And I had 15 minutes to refute him, and although long-winded, I took 2. I said, Dr. Igo, you're a very prominent pain physiologist. Thank you very much. You have cells there? Oh, yes. And set him up. And I said, if not mistaken, sir, you do your work on dogs, right? He said, oh, yes. And I said, you extrapolate the results to people, correct? He said, of course, that's why I do it. I said, good. Either your speech is false or your life's work is. I have a fun job. Happily, these laws have worked. And believe me, I mean, I do a lot of stuff for animal care committees all around the world. And I have a vested interest in them succeeding. But once they fall into the hands of bureaucrats, and they actually become a career, it's highly questionable. And I know you have a lot of that problem here. But nonetheless, the bottom line is from 0 papers in 1982, there are now 11,664, which I looked up before I came here. And that means there is a significant increase in use. And that means it mitigates one of the most blunt objections to animal research. Fair enough? And the literature on pain control has proliferated, and evidence is a reappropriation, what I call a reappropriation of common sense by the scientific community. Ordinary common sense throughout history, in contradistinction to scientific ideology or Cartesianism, never denied that animals felt pain. In fact, I called the scholar of animal, Rod Preece, who's written books on the history of attitudes towards animals, and he never, before Descartes, ran across anybody who said that animals don't feel pain. Far less pervasive is the notion that since animals felt pain, they were owed moral concern and attention. You do find it, strangely enough, in the Old Testament. There's a huge amount of forbidding of practices that cause unnecessary pain, yoking the ox in the ass, and even with regard to attitudes, the milk and meat business, comes from a passage that says, do not see the calf in its mother's milk because it erodes your sensitivity. Which is not bad. Even kosher slaughter, which has been maligned a lot, and also by me, was at the time of its inception a better alternative than being bludgeoned. An anatomically precise person cutting a vein, it's better than some ignorant redneck pounding the hell out of the animal's head. By the way, we just had a case of that. Did you see it? On the video that circulated? Some moron in Texas whose employees were killing sick male calves of no value with claw hammers. Now, I got to write a letter about that, and I hope the bastards fry for it. Kosher slaughter was then meant as a humane alternative. In today's world, it is not a humane alternative. And there's a lot of pseudoscience that says, no, it's great and all this kind of thing. But the bottom line is it's not instantaneous, and it does hurt. And unfortunately, there is no central authority in Judaism. Even Islam, when they were under pressure in New Zealand, the mullahs allowed for stunning. One of the troubles with Jews is you got 10 Jews, you got 15 opinions. So there will never be a consensus. In fact, there are certain arguments in the Talmud that go on for pages and pages and pages and pages. And finally they end by saying teku, which is abbreviation for when the Messiah comes, this will be resolved. It's really very funny, If common sense readily acknowledges pain and other forms of mattering, how did science come to be agnostic about it? First of all, modern science, as opposed to Aristotelian science, feels no need to accord with ordinary common sense or ordinary experience. Hence Descartes' overt effort at the beginning of the Meditations to discredit sense experiences, right? Modern physics is inimical to common sense. I mean, the world does not really consist of flowers and fish and living and non-living. It consists of little particles of matter in motion. And also, modern science blatantly contradicts common sense, as the paradoxes of relativity and quantum mechanics plainly illustrate. In checking with scholars and doing my own scholarship, no thinkers denied sentience to animals, except or before Descartes. What did happen was people who ignored the moral implications of that. By the way, and there's lots of reasons for that, because egalitarian thought was pretty well absent before the Enlightenment. And, okay, animals feel pain, so what? We have papers from human medical research on slaves, pre-Civil War. Slaves could talk, and obviously made clear their feelings about being experimented on. Didn't matter. It was done. It was a power thing. Furthermore, the main use of animals was historically agricultural, food, fiber, locomotion, and power. And the key to success in traditional agriculture was good husbandry, a word that has virtually disappeared to the discredit of the ag community. Animal science used to be animal husbandry until 1950. And animal husbandry meant teaching you how to take the animal, put it into the best possible environment, augmenting its natural abilities to survive and thrive with the provision of food during famine, water during drought, medical attention, help in birthing, etc.,